Okay. It is Sunday, August 4th, 2024, and I hope everybody is having a great start to the day so far, whether you're being impacted by the upcoming effects of what is likely soon going to be Hurricane Debby, or you are worried about inland severe weather. That is what this stream is right here to cover, so I didn't mean to rhyme right there, but here we are. If you can drop a thumbs up right down there in the live chat if you are with me right now and you can hear me okay. Let me know if there's any microphone issues, you're having any sound problems, if the screen doesn't look like it's flowing correctly, anything like that. Just let me know, because those are things I can fix before we get started. Otherwise, we're going to dive right into the depths of our content here very momentarily. Make sure you're hitting that like button. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. All that fun stuff as we go throughout this live stream. But it sounds on my end like everything's running okay, so we're going to go ahead and get into this with a look, first of all, at our satellite. I'll answer any questions about Debby very soon. I'll answer questions about inland severe weather, but I just want to do an overview of kind of everything here first, starting with just what is going on with Debby at this very moment. Now, this is as we're into the middle of our afternoon in Eastern time here for Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas, and we are already seeing this low-pressure system right here west of Tampa, Florida. This is our tropical storm, soon to be hurricane. It has a 65-mile-per-hour sustained wind field right around its center right now. It's expected to elevate to around 75 to 80 miles per hour, maybe even upwards of 85 to 90, right before that landfall right here near Tallahassee, Florida, just coming in on the southern side of there. So between Apalachicola and let's get kind of another point of reference. Between there, Perry, and down towards Homosassa Springs. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that if anybody lives in there. Anyway, anywhere right along in this corridor is where the best chance for landfall is. So we're going to have to watch those Category 1 impacts that could get going there. Tropical storm impacts elsewhere. This thing definitely starting to tighten up. We're starting to see more thunderstorm activity kind of circling around even to the west side of the center. It has had most of its activity remaining on this side all along, and that has kept most of Florida pretty active with showers and thunderstorms, some of which have produced, some spin-up tornado type warnings really on this western coast, especially for the last day or so now, as this thing continues to begin making its trek towards the north. Again, that landfall time frame is going to be somewhere around, notice this time on screen, around 8 a.m. into our Monday morning, so kicking off the work week. Not sure many people are going to be working in this area, as there's going to be probably not only the gusty winds out of this system, but also the flooding rains. And in fact, the flooding rains are going to be a big concern all the way into this part of the track that you see there. That's the National Hurricane Center's track line on screen as this passes by Valdosta, Georgia, down there well south of Macon, closer to Brunswick and Savannah. We're going to be watching the flooding threats. This will probably weaken down, especially the more time it spends over land. But this thing will then probably maybe touch the water again, depending on how this goes. The Hurricane Center has definitely shifted that track a little closer to staying on land, though, which is better, because we don't want this thing, another 100 miles offshore where it could be spinning around and try to get back to hurricane status. Something to track, but definitely somewhere around there, around the Carolina or Georgia coast is where it's going to be most of the early to midweek time frame. A lot of the rainfall surrounding that is going to be there during this time frame, and really all those spots where you already see all that cloud cover ongoing, that's where we're going to be having some of the best chances for very heavy and life-threatening rainfall that could cause significant tropical flooding. So again, I'll get into all your questions here in just a moment. Let's go ahead and kind of overview everything that we've got here out of this storm so far. Let's turn on that cone and kind of overlay that with what we're looking at here. And what you can really notice is that, again, things become a little uncertain once we get beyond about this point here. We know it's going to make its way as a landfall, probably a Cat 1 hurricane there in the Big Bend of Florida, closer to the Panhandle side. It's going to make its way up to around, due south of Macon, but right there closer to the Florida line, right there in Georgia, heading out of Monday into our early Tuesday. Right in here's where it could make some pivotal turns. It could try and sneak this way and not really even go back towards the water. But other more likely scenarios kind of have it trailing back out this way and then being able to curve back inland. It could stay like that. I mean, look at all these arrows. There's so many possibilities. Once you get beyond this point right here, it can do all sorts of little dancing around within this cone of uncertainty. And wherever these little dances and spins occur, that's where we're going to have that best chance for that significant flash flooding. There have even been model scenarios, believe it or not, that go beyond this cone and have it, instead of going up there towards the mid-Atlantic like many models have been showing all along, curling back in and heading like kind of trailing on a front back towards Mississippi and Alabama with just some rainfall and kind of dissipating. there are so many possibilities out of this storm, and that's why I just want to kind of bring them all to you. I don't want to make anything seem like it's not out of the question. But the most likely scenario right now is that we see Cat 1 hurricane here in Florida, tropical storm impacts, and especially the heavy rain into South Georgia. That will also be impacting the Carolinas as it moves out of Georgia. And then especially in this area as we head towards the mid to late week time frame, uncertainty is definitely there, but we'll have some heavy rainfall. And even up there towards Atlanta, Charlotte, Raleigh, all these locations, we could certainly see heavy rainfall at times as we go into the week ahead on the outer periphery of this, as well as with some gusty winds. So that's kind of the setup out of the storm right now. I do want to switch things over here in just a second. If you can drop me one more thumbs up to let me know that everything's still running somewhat smoothly over there on your end, that would be great for me here. But I'm going to go ahead and switch things over to our latest track, or let's actually take a look at the latest intensity guidance from our Tropical Tidbits website. Let's go on over to that, Tropic Slides. If you can still hear me okay, everything looks okay, one more thumbs up in the chat for me. That should be everything though. Here we're looking at the Tropical Storm Debby model intensity guidance, and I want to draw a few things out. This is where we're going to be heading out of our Sunday into our Monday. This is as we go to the landfall time frame. Again, landfall is probably going to be around that late Monday morning time frame, somewhere in there. It could be a little earlier, a little later, but give or take, Monday morning's the time frame. The strength around that time is likely going to be high-end high-end tropical storm, low to mid-grade Cat 1. Okay, there's a little bit of wiggle room. It could try to go up there towards a higher-end Cat 1, like the Hurricane Center cone is showing. But honestly, a lot of this guidance continues to persist in saying it's going to sit right in that low-end Cat 1 status. This thing has had a history of struggling to get thunderstorms all the way around its center, so I wouldn't be surprised if it stays right around that border. Regardless of whether we're right here at around 60 to 70 mile an hour tropical storm, or we're right here around a 70 to 80 mile per hour tropical storm turning into a Cat 1 hurricane, the impacts are not going to be too much different, especially since we're mainly worried about the rainfall side of things out of this. And then notice we see it drop down in intensity. So Monday going into Tuesday, this thing's definitely going to be over land. But then as we go towards Wednesday and Thursday, right in here, we see some models keep it down there low and continue to drop it off. We see other models continue to kind of keep it steady or bring it back up just a little bit in intensity. That's where this thing could go back over the water a little bit, or it could just stay on land, which staying on land, honestly, is better because most spots are going to be seeing the flooding anyway, whether this goes 100 miles offshore or stays on land. So we might as well have it stay on land, right, and lessen the wind impacts that are going to come out of this, because that's certainly what that would do. So this down here is obviously what everybody wants, or I would assume everybody wants, if you especially want less wind. But this scenario up here is, they're kind of split. You can see we've got a good sum of guidance there. We've got a good sum of guidance here. So there's some models that completely die this thing down, and there's others that kind of keep it steady, even as we go beyond Thursday and into Friday. And that could be if it even continues skirting up the Carolina coastline. Here's that latest track guidance from our multi-model ensembles here. This includes European, American, even Canadian guidance. The highest track confidence from this website, you see it down there in the bottom right side of this graphic. Here is that highest confidence, and I've drawn a little black line around it so you can already see it. Again, there's that Florida landfall. Here we go into Georgia. But then notice right in here we see things really expand. I mean, anywhere in there this thing could be, and the timing of where this thing's going to be and when is very uncertain beyond Tuesday into Wednesday. But I think now that we've kind of got the overview of the storm, it's time to start breaking down some of the finer details, and that includes arguably what's going on right now and into some of the timing. So I'm going to go ahead and flip things back on over now. Let's go over to my timing side of things, and I'm going to put on the latest model, that latest HRRR model. We are getting some newer guidance. There will be a full run that comes out in just over an hour. We'll see if I sit and wait around on that, but I'm going to use this morning's run because I think it does a pretty effective job of showing overall what the storm's going to do in the more near term, which is the more certain side of things anyway. So again, through the rest of today, which is our Sunday, we've been seeing already some tornadic action trying to spin on up there through the lower third of Florida. Here we go towards the middle to the back half of the day. We're doing the stream right now, and this is coming to life pretty well. Overall, most of the impacts of the storm are literally staying confined right in here, and that's going to continue to be the case as we go through the rest of our Sunday. Heavy rain, some isolated to scattered bouts of flash flooding, especially the further you go towards that west coast. And then we'll also have embedded in any of these little lines. You see one there, there's one there, there's one actually kind of offshore trying to move into far southern Georgia. Any of these lines, we can get those little supercells embedded, and that's where we get that isolated tornado potential, because you get that wind shear surrounding a tropical cyclone. That's something we'll have to track So Tampa going throughout the rest of today, I mean, you could have very heavy rain, and this kind of band right here that's going to skirt along that west central Florida coast in the peninsula is what really concerns me, because as this thing continues moving through the water, it's strengthening up. This eastern side's going to have more tropical storm force winds eventually with time. And Tampa, we're under a tropical storm warning there along that coastline near there, all the way up here. We've got hurricane warnings along this general area of the coastline. So this is definitely a pretty concerning setup, to say the least, as we're going to have the heavy rainfall as the main concern in a lot of these areas, even into central Florida, Orlando, points to the west and northwest. These bands, isolated tornadoes, the flooding risk will go up with time as these continue rolling over the same spots. And again, there's that landfall. It could even be earlier in the morning, like I mentioned. It's give or take somewhere in the morning tomorrow. It shows it being right there around Perry, Florida, where we get that eye wall, whatever it is in this disorganized system to come on shore. But again, notice I don't think this thing is ever going to try and make that move towards a stronger end hurricane. We're never going to see the extreme level of rapid intensification occur. And in fact, this is coming on shore very similar in Florida to what happened with Beryl back there in Texas. I don't want to make any crazy comparisons, but I feel like this thing is very lopsided. There's kind of going to be maybe an area, a dead zone, where there's less wind and there's a little bit more of that core of the storm coming on shore for a time. Then the winds will pick back up. There will be some 50, 60, 70 plus mile per hour wind gusts. I just don't know if the winds are going to be sustained quite even as high as the Hurricane Center says. That's something to keep an eye on. I don't want to underestimate this storm either. Take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. It just certainly, the models continue to indicate that this thing's probably going to struggle and be pretty east side loaded as it comes on shore. However, I keep saying east side loaded, and east side loaded means we're getting all this rainfall coming into our Monday morning, pumping out of central Florida all the way up there to South Georgia. Most of Florida is going to be under flood alerts at this point. You can assume, because we will have been seeing hours and hours, in fact, over a day of rain in this general vicinity, because right now, as I do this live stream, we're already seeing the rainfall filling in there into north central Florida. Then we continue to see Debby push towards the northeast, probably weakening. The center is going to be somewhere in this general area. Again, if it stays further south and goes back over the water, we'll probably see it strengthen a little bit more. If it goes more like this, it'll stay over land longer and we won't see as much strengthening with time. This whole area, though, we definitely got to keep an eye on it. Again, notice all the way up here to Raleigh, Charlotte, Greenville, Atlanta. Be on alert this week. There's going to be little shifts, and there could be little bands of storms at the minimum that fly up that far north. Some gusty winds. But again, the main threat, I think, at this point, look at this. We're going to see that spin lingering around there in this area for quite some time, and that means this area as well is going to see that flood threat just skyrocket. In fact, let's talk about the flooding impacts that this storm could certainly bring. I'm very concerned about the flooding, honestly. I think this is going to be the main thing this storm brings with it for millions of people who are in the threats of this storm and in the crosshairs. Let's go on over to my tropic slides. There we go. Here is the rainfall forecast from the Weather Prediction Center here. This is Tropical Storm Debby. It's going to be Hurricane Debby probably when it makes that landfall. Speaking of the landfall, notice right in there from Tallahassee over to Jacksonville, anywhere in between there. If you know you live between Tallahassee and Jacksonville along that kind of I-10 corridor in between, this area right here is going to be one of those first areas where we see probably some of the more major flooding come on shore. You see those oranges and those reds. Those indicate widespread. I mean, these are probably totals that are going to be, the totals are going to be even higher than some of these numbers in cases. These are just going to be the averages for many spots. From Tallahassee to Jacksonville, anywhere from 6 to 8 inches in the orange up to 8 to 12 coming out of the orange and into that red where we could even see 12 to 16 inches of rain as this thing pushes on shore. It is not the slowest moving thing even there, so we already know that this thing has a crud ton of rain to drop down. It's already going to be bringing that heat into the north central part of Florida, into the south central part of Georgia, down there in the far southern quarter of Georgia. Definitely be concerned, because we could see some very concerning rainfall rates there as well, just on the northwest side of Jacksonville, just there on the northeast side of Tallahassee in Florida. Then we continue to see this thing making its way off towards the northeast there, south of Augusta, Georgia, down to Savannah and over to Charleston. Look at that pocket. That is that one that looks like it's going to bring all that major flooding, and that's why while this thing sits around, no matter the wind speeds, whether they're 30, 40, 50 plus for the gusts, the rain is going to be a problem, and there will be trees dropping even in if the winds stay a little bit lower, because the water is going to be flooding these trees' roots probably already. I mean, this quarter right here, if you're south of Columbia, South Carolina, southeast of Macon there in Georgia, south of Raleigh, North Carolina, all the way through this week. There's going to be a crud ton of rain, and somewhere in here we're going to pick up 2 to 3 feet of rain somewhere, okay? I'd almost bet. And I mean, look at this key. It's already saying, 20 to 30 is that spot right there. So, yeah, I mean, we'll definitely have some spots that push 3 to 4 feet at the high end. And the fact that that's the high end is very, very dangerous, and I want everybody to please be prepared for that. And then, again, things are iffy for how much rain there's going to be here. It's iffy for how much rain there's going to be up here. It depends on whether this continues lingering around down here, makes a little bit more of an inland track, or eventually makes more of an inland track. All those are little pinpoint details that still are going to have to be figured out as we get within 24 to 48 hours of that happening, because the short-range guidance is still going to be coming in. Let's see if I have that. No, I don't have that graphic pulled up right now. Okay, I want to go ahead and go over to some of the active warnings. I guess we'll do that. Let me see what we can do with this. Hopefully this is at least on your screen, and you can first of all see where the tropical storm force winds are likely. This is your tropical storm force wind probabilities from the National Hurricane Center. It's going to be a little bit off your screen, but you can still see the overall graphic. Right in there, that's where the tropical storm force winds are going to happen. And then over here, it's very uncertain, especially depending on whether or not we touch the water more or if we stay on land more. But there will definitely at least be some tropical storm force gusts on and off, especially the further south you go in Georgia, further south you go in South Carolina. North Carolina, it's a little up in the air what's going to happen up there with tropical storm force winds. Let's see. Let's go over. I want to show you the storm surge for Florida too, as well as the Carolina coast. Here's that peak storm surge forecast. Notice it is up there now to 6 to 10 feet from the Suwannee River right there in the Big Bend of Florida over to, I don't even want to try and pronounce that, but you can read it. I'm sorry, I really don't want to pronounce that wrong. Ocklawaha River. I apologize if I said that wrong. Right there in that area, 6 to 10 feet of storm surge above normal ground levels right there along that coast, coming up into the rivers. This is saltwater inundation that is going to be occurring, and rivers are going to be filling up with fresh water coming out of the sky as well. So very concerned about all of this water mingling together there. Remember, up to a foot of rain or a little bit more, definitely possible with that landfall area. And then all along here, at least a few feet of storm surge, and then a few feet of storm surge up there into Georgia and the South Carolina coastline as well, heading out of probably Monday, going more towards Tuesday. Here's that latest cone graphic. I already showed you this in Radar Omega, but generally speaking, here are those warnings. Tropical storm warnings continue down here in southwest Florida. Those will probably expire at some point later today, I believe, on our Sunday. And then, don't take my word fully on that, but it looks like right in here, these warnings are going to be the ones that continue for a little bit longer, as we're even got a hurricane warning up right there in that Big Bend of Florida. Notice it's mostly on that east side, because that's where those strongest winds are going to be. Over there, if you're in Alabama, you should be just fine. We don't have really many wind concerns over there at all. We do have a tropical storm watch up here along the Carolina coastline, all the way down there to the south central Georgia coastline, right on that Jacksonville, Florida border right there. So I want to call out some of the locations. It looks like Charleston, over to Beaufort, over to Savannah, Georgia, down there to Brunswick, Georgia. You are going to be under that tropical storm watch right now. But the spots under that hurricane warning for the near term for that Monday morning landfall, that's just south of Perry, Florida, and in surrounding locations. Very similar spot to where Idalia went last year with its landfall. And that is very interesting to see for sure. Okay. That is all the details I have on this, except for the fact that we've got a tornado potential. And, of course, I'm going to continue to go through a lot more information as we go through the rest of the stream. Right now, I am just focusing on getting this part out of the way so I can answer some questions. I'll answer anybody's questions after the stream down there, and that's just the regular comments section as well. Here is our severe scale for our Sunday. Now, I'm going to be honest, a lot of this is based off just the Storm Prediction Center's graphics for today, mainly because I wanted to get this stream on the road already. But notice right down here in Florida, Georgia, we've got that 3 of 7 for scattered severe weather in South Georgia into parts of Florida, 4 tropical spin-up tornadoes, isolated severe weather in Montana, surrounding areas, South Dakota, Minnesota, over here from New York to Maine. We've also got potentials today on our Sunday, and this does include Sunday night. Then as we go towards Monday, interesting tornado setup's going to happen here in parts of Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin. We're going to have a possibility of some damaging winds and hail there as well, and then over there in the northeast. And then, of course, we're going to have that tornado set up right in this box area that I'm boxing in right now. And, of course, there will be some offshore water spouts going on for sure, right off that Florida northeast coastline, all of the Georgia coastline, and a good bit of the South Carolina and even southwest North Carolina coastlines Monday going into Monday night. So those are my severe scale graphics, and really they just kind of go off the Storm Prediction Center's graphics. I relied a little more heavily on those Storm Prediction Center graphics than sometimes I normally do. Let me just get a drink of some water real quick. Been going talking nonstop for the last 20 minutes, and then I'll start answering some questions, going over some things I haven't yet, going over some new types of timing. We're in no way done with the stream yet. All right, let's see what questions we have in the chat. Again, if you are watching this stream later on after I've been live, please don't hesitate to reach out and just drop a comment below to ask any questions. Let's see, will this tropical storm hit Virginia? That is a great question. I want to show you what could occur with Virginia, because this is a very interesting scenario. Let's go back on over to Radar Omega timing. Okay, here we go. We're going to take a look. I just want to show you the European model. I think it's been pretty steady with a lot of what it's been showing on this storm, and this is the earlier day run. The newer ones come out. I don't know why it hasn't processed yet, but we're going to go with this one for now. And we don't want it to turn red, do we? Okay, there we go. That's more like it. Playing it out. Again, there's that landfall. It's going to linger around the Georgia-Carolina coast. And then, yeah, Virginia, you're going to be sitting under the influence of a front, really starting as we go into the 6th and then going into the 7th. So Tuesday going into Wednesday, we're already going to be seeing some frontal activity there. Into the 8th, 9th, 10th, this could certainly, especially if it moves more northeast, interact with that front there and continue to bring some heavy rain and maybe some gustier winds at times. I don't think wind would be a crazy concern, but definitely some heavy rainfall and maybe even a coastal tornado or water spout potential or two heading towards the end of this week. And then by the middle to back half of next weekend, it should clear out. If you go with that scenario, the GFS has been strange, to say the least, with this storm. It's trying to say that it's going to get kind of stuck between a front and some high pressure that's to the west, and it wants to kind of force this storm back on shore, but way back on shore after it comes ashore there in the Carolinas for the second time. Here we go. Look at there. It goes right offshore near Savannah, then comes right back in. And then look at that. Virginia wouldn't see quite as many impacts if this thing went all the way back inland towards Alabama and Georgia. The only good news with that is that's a little bit less rain for areas right on that Carolina coast if it flies back inland that quickly. I just don't think that's necessarily the most likely scenario. It's probably going to sit around here for at least a few days. Let's see. How about Boone and North Carolina? Boone, North Carolina, up there in the far northwestern area. I've seen you on the map before. It isn't really looking like there's going to be too significant of impacts there. I think normally the winds tend to flow and stay south of here, but you could certainly see some gusty winds move up into the mountains if this thing came back inland, especially like this GFS model is showing. It's very uncertain on the impacts up there, though, and that's something I would stay tuned for. I mentioned earlier, there will be more info that eventually comes out. That's what you really need to wait on. It is not a Category 1 hurricane yet. Misty in the chat. It will possibly become one here within the next 24 hours, though, and in fact, that's a pretty decent chance that it at least becomes a low-end Cat 1 before landfall. We've got some good conversation going on. Avery Fuller, Carly Winthrop, thanks for being in the chat. Jake's awesome vids. Here's everything. That's good. Got lots of thumbs up so everybody can hear me. That is awesome. Weather with Sim, nice to see you in the chat. Got other people in the chat as well, so thank you to everybody, and if I miss your name, I apologize. LA Tours by Rain Maves, hello. Any other questions? Let's see. Severe Storm Filmers doing a live stream right now as well. Thank you so much, Weatherman of the North, for the $2 donation, and that is appreciated right down there in the chat. Always love the support from you. Severe Squall Line is about to hit Apalachicola. Severe Storm Filmer says, yeah, there have been ongoing storms while I've been doing this live stream as well. Again, to everybody watching later, please, I've gotten comments before, after my live streams, this is why I bring this up, from people thinking that what I'm talking about is happening right now. I'm either talking about something in the future, and if I'm talking about something right now, you can look at the time when I filmed this video. It'll say like blah blah hours ago or blah blah days ago. Please use that, because I don't want anybody thinking there's any storms ongoing that there aren't. But let's go down here and investigate the situation. Now we've definitely got some storms here in Florida. Let's see if what's coming on. Yeah, there are definitely some stronger storms that are going to be pushing towards the Apalachicola, Florida region very, very soon. And those will probably have some stronger winds with them. Those ones right in, yeah, those offshore, right off Sierra Key moving to the northwest, those probably have some damaging winds and water spout potential with them as they go through. So again, this is what I was talking about. All through the really northern two-thirds of Florida, especially heading into Georgia, we're going to continue to watch the thunderstorm activity really ramp up just like you would have with any sort of normal low-pressure system. And of course, tornado potential gets elevated because you do have the wind shear and the circulation of a tropical cyclone. Let's see here. The incoming trough is what is keeping it from moving in further north. Yeah, that is correct, weatherman of the north. We can even, in fact, look at some of that steering. That's a great idea. Let's go on over to my WeatherBell. Don't forget that you can always get a free trial of WeatherBell right down there in the description of this video. There's a link. Here we go. Let's take a look at some of the steering. But yeah, we do have a trough digging in from the north right now, and that's what's really kind of keeping this thing further south. You can see that kind of sitting in right there. There's a trough, and it's a little late for getting pulled up. If it were right here, it would probably get pulled away by the trough, but it's kind of stuck under it. There's ridging going on over here, high pressure ridging. And in fact, we can take a look at that on the 500 millibar height anomaly. There it is. There's your ridging. There's your ridging there. And then we've got this system kind of being pulled into this gap right here. But notice why it's going to be forced back out towards the coast a little faster, because we actually get more ridging ahead of another trough digging in up there, trying to move into the Ohio Valley. So there's going to be this kind of little area where it's going to get stuck. And again, the GFS model, let me show you kind of why it brings it back inland. There it is. It shows it being stuck just like the Euro does. But look at all the space that suddenly doesn't have ridging back towards the west, and there's a lot of troughing going right here. I guess it wants to pull it back the other way because of that. I don't think the GFS model is really on top of things. But, you know, you got to look at all these scenarios and at least say they're a possibility. So that's something I'm watching for it to slide back towards the west and then dissipate more towards Alabama as a weaker system. All these models, though, they bring the heavy rainfall. And in fact, if we take a look at the European models of rainfall, I want to start with Florida. Let's go state by state with some of those rainfall totals. Surface precipitation. Here we go. Alright, so Florida, here's the rainfall that the Euro is showing. It falls pretty in line with what the Weather Prediction Center was showing overall for the rainfall totals. Notice there's that swath of where we have the best chance of getting 6 to 12 inches of rain, and on top of what's already fallen. And other, well, let's pull this back a little bit because there could be some rain. Yeah, there we go. Here's what this is actually bringing, this particular storm. Down here, still another few inches. That could bring up some flooding. We've already had flash flood warnings in this part of the state. If you're west of this line right here in Florida, so if you're really anywhere west of, say, Tallahassee, you really see the flood threat decrease from there. And then as we go towards, let's move things over to Georgia. There's Georgia. It really looks like the longer this thing lingers around, the more rain you could get. But right here and into the Carolina coastline, notice widespread 6 to 12 inches. We'll have several spots that pick 12 to 24 inches of rainfall as well. So you definitely need to be prepared up there in that area. And the flood threat, too. I mean, the low-lying areas, Savannah, Georgia, Charleston, South Carolina, these are spots that have a history of getting flooded by water when there's a lot less water than this. So this is, you know, I would know. I live in South Carolina. So Charleston, South Carolina, very concerned, especially if you get some of those locally higher totals, upwards of 2 feet, of how that rainfall could affect everything and cause some devastation in the way of flooding. In terms of the winds, well, oh yeah, let's look at the GFS model, what it shows. Yeah, it shows pretty similar to the Euro, a little bit more bullish on the rain, and I think that's a pretty good scenario. And then notice the GFS pulls it inland enough to where even over there to western Georgia, a few inches of rain could fall later this week if it curls back that way. The setup for the mid-Atlantic and northeast remains very uncertain out of this storm, though. In terms of wind gusts, here's the swath that this brings. So look at all the areas that could see the highest winds. Down there, South Georgia into parts of the Florida landfall location. That's where we'll have the best chance of 60-plus mile-an-hour gusts. Then as you go out of Georgia and towards the Carolinas, notice those gusts more towards 40 to 50 overall. That's probably a good estimate. Inland, probably some 20 to 30. I don't know if they'll get upwards of 35 like this shows. That depends on if it curls back inland as much as the GFS shows after that second possible landfall here. But definitely be prepared for some 20 to 30 at some point this week up here. And then up to the mid-Atlantic U.S., I mean, it's a toss-up right now. But we have had scenarios that show some gusty winds heading up that way as well, especially if you go with the Euro model. Let's go over to it. Look at that wind gust swath. It tries to bring up some gusts up along that coastline there. As this thing, instead of going back as far inland as the GFS shows, makes that trek north-northeast, like so. Southeast of Raleigh, how's the rainfall forecast? Jim Ferguson says, great question. Let me go ahead and check on in for you right there with that. That is a great question. Yeah, so Raleigh, North Carolina, you're kind of in a toss-up zone. I want to start up with let's go over to North and South Carolina. I want to start up with the Weather Prediction Center's forecast because I feel like it's just going to do the best job of showing you how much rain is most likely to occur. And it kind of takes out some of those finer details the model shows and averages everything out. So again, Raleigh, North Carolina, let's get right into you here. All right. Just want to make sure I've got the location correct. So your overall somewhere right in here would be my prediction. And it's looking like you could definitely, depending on the track, again, if it all of a sudden makes that weird turn the GFS shows, you'd get less rain if it cuts back inland quickly. But overall, most models have it going up and towards North Carolina, Virginia with some of that rainfall with time. So by the end of this week, there's a solid chance you get a few 3 to 6 inches of rain. And maybe some locally higher totals. That could certainly bring in some flooding concerns. So please be alert for monitoring, and please be monitoring for changes in your forecast, because I can certainly tell you the wind speeds are not set in, the rainfall's not set in. They're the really only point where the rainfall is set into right now, and really any impacts are guaranteed at this point to be around what I've said is south of this line. And then once you get up here, you're almost not in la la land, but just in a weird area, depending on the way things turn. But definitely be prepared for that higher end scenario with at least several inches of rain. Jim Ferguson. Could this affect my area next week with wind and storm? Severe storm. Fulmer says, your normal area up there in parts of Ohio. Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's going to stay closer to the coast, but if it tries to cut back inland like that GFS showed, then maybe some of that moisture would get flung up that way. Could this, oh yeah, I just read that one. Hello to you, Samuel Wilkinson Jr. Thank you so much for joining in. Hello to everybody who is just now tuning into the stream. Please consider hitting that like button. It really helps me out. If you're new, subscribe to the channel. What other questions do we have? And it can be, while we kind of wait on any other questions on that tropical system, we do have weather to talk about across the rest of the country, and I promised that in the title to this live stream, so I do want to talk about that for the upcoming week ahead. Here we go through into our Monday. Again, we've got tropical activity going on down here in the far southeastern United States. We're going to be seeing probably some heavy rainfall and definitely some gusty winds out of some of these storms late Monday heading into Tuesday. Parts of Minnesota into Iowa, Wisconsin, northern Illinois. I wouldn't rule out some tornadoes up there. This little boundary will have some damaging winds and hail possible late Monday going into Tuesday as well. So it's going to be active up there. And then let's skip out of Monday into our Tuesday. Yeah, sitting around, probably we'll have the tropical entity impacting areas somewhere in here. Late Tuesday, definitely some gusty winds possible with those storms in New England. Stronger storms possible out here, Montana, into the Dakotas. And then towards Wednesday afternoon, playing things out, looks like we remain fairly active over the north central plains. But really, most activity here in the southeast U.S. by this point will be being driven by this low. I can show you how uncertain this low really is in comparison. Let's go to the comparison with the GFS model. I want to see if I can. Is there any way I can do like full screen? Let's see. Is this full screen? Just give me a sec here. The screen should be black. That is intentional. Okay, this will do. You can just see on my screen. GFS and Euro are in pretty similar agreement that it's going to be off that Georgia or Carolina coast still as we go towards late Wednesday. But then from there, look at how it goes back inland. It'll be sitting right on that coast, and then when it goes back inland, Euro does the situation. It follows that track that's been really pretty prominent for the last several runs, going up there towards the mid-Atlantic, combining with that lingering front that's been up there Tuesday into Wednesday, bringing more showers and thunderstorms while weakening. Whereas look at that GFS, it pulls it over there towards Georgia, Alabama, keeps the rain more active for the southeast U.S. as opposed to the northeast. And then look at that GFS scenario, it brings up like another tropical storm through that exact same track, through the eastern Gulf, I mean. But yeah, there's disagreement, definitely. But for you like Jim Ferguson, who's been in the live chat here, Raleigh, it definitely looks like you'll feel the effects of some rain later this week regardless. The Euro would definitely be the heavier setup, though, as it kind of brings it right over Raleigh, honestly. Okay, let's pull out of that again and go back over to my main. There we go. Back to the rest of this country's weather for this week again. We could have rain here later this week if you go with the GFS, rain here with the Euro. The models are mostly agreeing that it would be more this way overall. So out of the southeast into the mid-Atlantic and northeast, that's the best chance for the impacts from rain and a front later this week, combining with our hurricane or what's left of. And then back over here in this area, we'll be watching some showers and storms too later this week. Nothing crazy. I don't see any crazy, like, ring of fire weather patterns. There are some storms on the horizon that maybe will move through this general vicinity again sometime, but I don't see any crazy ring of fire patterns like we had last week. Could northern Ohio see severe weather tomorrow? Okay, tomorrow being Monday, let's take a look. Yeah, you are in that. I had you on the edge of my level 3 of 7 on my ONW severe scale. It is possible, certainly. You see that boundary right there. That's where the severe weather could be late Monday going into Tuesday. It does not look as likely as areas a little bit further east or a little bit further west. I feel like that's been what I've been saying for you for a while now, Severe Storm Filmer, but don't get your hopes down because you are in that little area that has a better chance in Ohio than anywhere else. So, damaging winds and hail possible. Yeah, the wildfires out west have been crazy. I agree, Jim Ferguson. In fact, I think we can look at wildfire smoke. Yeah, there it is. Here's the latest wildfire smoke. By the way, the new HRRR run is coming in right now, but it's going to take a little while to process as I film this live stream. Yeah, up there in the Mountain West, not really much to bring relief, unless you're east of the Rockies especially. Really, if you come over here, then you start to see things clear. Of a lot of that smoke, it looks like anyway. And with more rainfall in the forecast, too. Haven't done a live stream in quite a while. No worries, Weather with Sim. Glad to see ya. Everybody say bye to him. Drop some waves in the chat. If you're with me live right now, anyway. Thanks for tuning in today. Please, anybody, if you have questions, I'd love to answer them, because we're just kind of sitting here talking about some overall things right now. Had a little bit of a scratch in my throat today. I feel like that happened the last time I did a live stream as well. But yeah, the impacts are certainly going to begin picking up very soon. What other questions do we have here in the chat? Got some good conversations that have been ongoing. Okay, Samuel Wilkinson Jr. says, my family or friend is at Front Royal, Virginia. I'll have to plug that in and figure out where that is. And hopefully you kind of caught some of that info I was just throwing out. If you go with the European model, it's going to bring more rain towards the mid-Atlantic later this week, whereas the GFS is not. In fact, let's go ahead and investigate that again. Let's go back to that Euro versus GFS thing. Euro versus GFS. Pull up the full screen. Like that. Yeah, that's how I was doing it. Okay, you can see in front row Virginia, yeah, you're going to have the potential for some storms up there as early as Tuesday going into Wednesday with a front. But overall, the better chances of rain are going to come later this week, especially even if that front, notice both these models indicate that front will keep you rainy heading towards Thursday, Friday, with better chances of storms up in that area. And then how heavy the rain is heading into the start of the upcoming weekend depends on whether or not Debby's there, like the Euro shows, or if it's not, like the GFS shows, and it weakened down in the southeast U.S. as opposed to the mid-Atlantic. I don't think I'm getting sick, Severe Storm Filmer. I think I've just got a little bit of a scratchy throat. It happens sometimes when I do these streams for a while, because I talk so quickly at the start that I kind of exacerbate my voice pretty quickly. Any other questions, everyone? If not, I might kind of call the stream off for now. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and get this stream to a close. I appreciate everybody who joined me here in the chat and stream today. That will be it for this live update on the USA's weather and Hurricane Debby. I'm checking out.